That's right. The youth has gone wild in the Mile High City, and there's an advantage here that maybe some people are overlooking. It's orange and blue today. It's Cecil Lammey. It's Andrew Mason. And let's get into this youth movement. We will talk about the receivers, Devon Vele, Trey Franklin a little bit later, but this youth thing, it's certainly got the buzz. Everyone's talking about it, Mace. And yeah, it actually can be a distinct advantage for the Broncos.
It can. It's an energy advantage. You and I
Sure.
talked earlier this week also about the whole thing of, hey, you don't know what you can't do when you're young. And that's something that some players are talking about as well. Now, again, how do you handle it when you get to punch the mouth for the first time? That's a key thing as well. But, there's two sides to the coin of it. But at this point, you have a bunch of teams, a bunch of players on this team that they're not bound by the constrictions and the preconceived notions that can be established the longer you're in the NFL. And I think the other thing that's freeing is that they're operating in an environment that is relatively free of public expectations, because the general consensus is that this year is a rebuilding year for the Broncos. Although, like Devontae Williams said a couple of days back, doesn't mean that you're not winning.
Exactly. And I believe it was Javonte also that said that the young to him means you can play free. And that means less kind of thinking of like, oh, this situation, or, oh, last time we did this, then that. It's like, you're just young, you're excited about being in the league, and you get to play free. And again, not a lot of expectations. The national opinion is that you stink. How's that going to sit in that locker room?
Well, it certainly has a lot of parallels with Sean Payton's first team in New Orleans, does it not? Back in 06.
Mm-hmm.
Young in a lot of spots. Not as young at quarterback, because Drew Brees was a 60-year veteran coming in as a free agent from the San Diego Chargers. But unburdened by expectations. And then they came in and stunned the world. I mean, this really does feel like the first season of the Sean Payton era. I don't know how to kind of look at last year in retrospect. This feels like the first year we're getting Sean Payton's team. Last year, it was like, let's see if I can make the pieces work with what I've got. In that respect, it has a lot in common with Bill Belichick's first season in New England back in 2000, when they went 5-11. And it was, okay, which pieces are going to be part of this going forward? One of them was supposed to be Drew Bledsoe, of course, because they signed him to an extension, and then he got injured and Tom Brady came in. So there was a little bit of a happy accident there. But by and large, that first year was figuring out who's in, who's out. That's what Sean Payton's first year was here in Denver. Who's in, who's out. Now, you could say, like, on the rebuild, as it were, I think the clock really starts to tick on the rebuild. Like, okay, let's start hitting some mile markers here as we go on. It's part of why I think, even though there's a lot of quiet confidence at Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit, about this year's team, to me, it's still about where are you going to be in 2025 and what are you accomplishing then?
Mm-hmm. How are you coming together? Let's go ahead and play that Javonte thing, because the rebuilding thing, Alex Singleton's like, anyone says that is full of blank.
Beep.
Oh, Alex. And then Javonte.
Alex couldn't stop using the Brown word on Wednesday. It was hilarious.
Yeah. And I was like, I hope nobody's taking it live, but you're ruining their feed. Way to go, Alex. But it's funny that Javonte, I think, speaks something that's closer to the truth. Here's what Javonte had to say.
Yeah, I definitely say it's rebuilding, but as far as like losing a lot of games rebuilding, I wouldn't say that. Hopefully, we can just, like Coach been preaching, start out strong. I mean, I know we're young, but we got a lot of people that's hungry and ready to get out there, so we can just start fast. I feel like we'll be all right.
Starting fast, that's another thing you're hearing a lot, is looking back at last year. They opened, of course, 1-5, which means from that point forward, they went 7-4. 7-4 if you stayed on that pace for another 6 games, that have you about 4-2? 7-4 has you on a 10 to 11 win pace for the season. So that's why you can sit there and say, okay, yeah, the start doomed them. In retrospect, yeah, the start did doom them. And it wasn't, and they started to win. Part of it was simplifying the defense, and they generated more takeaways. Part of it was taking that offense and because you had the quarterback that you were working around, reining it back in, because pushing it around the field. Russell Wilson had some pretty robust yardage totals, remember, early on in the season.
Then they changed.
Yeah, they
and
changed.
Then they won.
The start of the change was in the Jets game that they lost, and then of course they lost on Thursday night to the Kansas City Chiefs. But those first, like last year, Russell Wilson had 2 300-yard games in the first 4 weeks of the season. 308 against Washington, 306 against Miami when you were basically chasing from behind. And so his totals were 177, 308, 306, 223. His totals for the next 5 games, 196, 95, 194, 114, 193. I mean, there's a pattern that developed because you had to rein things in because you weren't capable of winning with even an impression of the Sean Payton offense. He had to throttle it back to compensate for the quarterback. So it's going to look different when you've got a quarterback that you trust to hit his marks and find guys on target. Whether it means you start fast or not, that's a different story, because unfortunately, this is where a challenge comes in for Bo Nix as a young quarterback. Mike McDonald, Steelers, of course, Mike Tomlin, a defensive-minded head coach, Todd Bowles, and then Robert Saleh. You've got 4 either head coaches or defensive coordinators. They all know what they're doing. And by the way, 4 head coaches who are defensive-minded to open the season. They're going to have things schemed up for Bo Nix. They're going to try to confuse him. They're going to disguise things. Look for a lot of, you bring your inside backers close and then you pull them back, or maybe you blitz one and not the other. Look for them to try to confuse Bo Nix with some different pre-snap looks, blitzes coming from different spots, pressures coming from different spots, etc. They're gonna try to manipulate him into making a bad throw. So there are going to be challenges that could prevent a fast start like the Broncos are hoping for. But if they get off to a fast start, I would define a fast start as 2-2. 2-2 after 1 month, to me, you are in great shape.
With this young team? Yeah.
What?
With this young team?
Yes.
You're in great shape. And I think
I'd take 2 wins in September all the way. I'd be thrilled with that for this team.
To quote 89 Batman, where do they get a load of me?
Yeah.
Because I believe, and Bo's going to learn, Bo's going to make mistakes, but I believe Bo is one of the quarterbacks that if you blitz him, he'll kill you.
I think he's going to get there, but there could be some broken eggs en route to getting him there.
Sure. Right. We got him. We fooled him. But the youth thing means you've never seen him either.
Right. But it's the whole thing of he doesn't make the same mistake twice that we keep hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That means the mistake's going to happen, but does it happen again? Like maybe the mistake happens in week 1 or week 2, and then you see something similar tossed at him by Todd Bowles or Robert Saleh, and he doesn't fall for it. And that's going to be cool to see, because I think we're going to have some moments where that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is, of course, teams are going to see what he does well, and they're going to adapt, and then he's got to adapt back. So there's 2 layers to this, and that's why I think it would be really interesting, Cease, to sit there and do a show after week 8 to say, let's look at Bo Nix and his progress to this point. Let's talk about the arc and what's happening. Because I think that would really give us kind of that's kind of a first mile marker here of where Bo Nix is standing. Is he continuing to not repeat mistakes like has been the case on the practice field? And if that's the case, he's going to take off like a rocket.
Look out.
Yeah.
Wasn't it earlier this week, Coach said something about the quarter pole? I don't want to play semantics, but the quarter pole's at the end of the race. But
they talk
8,
about it like it's.
I'll say week 4.
Yeah.
We should look at week 4 and be like, okay, are they 2-2? Are they 4-0? Are they 3-1? Are they 0-4? What is it after 4 games?
John Fox was huge on the quarter pole. And of course, we know Sean Payton and John Fox go back to both working together under Jim Fossil with the New York Giants back around the turn of the century. So it doesn't surprise me that even though, Sean has a different outlook on things, there is some shared DNA there between Sean Payton and John Fox philosophy, and the kind of the quarter pole is like one example of that.
Right. You've got advantages to youth, something that Mike McGlinchey talked about earlier this week. So let's hear from good old Mike.
Well, I think the youth thing is actually an advantage. You got a lot of guys that are young and don't really know what success or failure feels like, and they just know how to do their job, and they do it fast and for real and as hard as they can. I think the bliss of not knowing, where we could be or the expectations put off of our shoulders because of, whatever the outside perception is, I think is an advantage to us. And I think it just allows you to play free. I think it allows you to play competitively. And I think there's a lot of guys in this building with a lot of talent that haven't necessarily gotten a shot to prove that to the rest of the world yet. And, it's awesome to have them overlook us because it's going to be a lot of fun when we prove them wrong.
A little chip on the shoulder there, what he said at the end.
I love it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He talked about the way it feels. Like, you don't know how it feels in the NFL.
Yeah.
We talked to John Franklin Myers. I believe you asked him about hey, you're in the Super Bowl your first year, you don't get back. Like, you don't know how it feels until you get there. Sometimes you think it's easy, and even JFM kind of admitted that to you.
I remember this is just, we all pick up lessons in our lives, whether they're lessons about just living life or lessons about sports. I'm of the generation, and probably you are too, that thinks about Dan Marino an awful lot. Came into the league first, he doesn't start at the opening of his first year. By the end of that year, he's got the Dolphins winning the AFC East. The year after that, they're in the Super Bowl. And it's Dan Marino, Joe Montana, Dolphins, 49ers, Super Bowl 19. And the Niners won, but the general consensus was, Marino's going to be back. He's going to be back a bunch of times. They lost today. Don't worry. They're going to get theirs. And they never made it back. Miami still hasn't made it back to a Super Bowl. I think about that a lot. So Dan Marino, I think, objectively an all-time quarterback. Where he ranks kind of, depends
Best
on
pure passer in NFL history.
Yes. I've never seen a better pure passer of the football than Dan Marino.
Whew.
And man, I don't know if you ever see some of the video, like him doing trick shots, like trick throws before games. It's otherworldly what this guy could do.
Mm-hmm.
And he never made it back. But everyone, the whole sports world assumed Dan Marino will be back in the Super Bowl. I thought, he'll get his. Never did. Chased it for 15 more years. Stayed in 1 year longer than John Elway, in part because he's like, maybe this is it. Maybe this is it. I mean, it took losing his last game 62-7 in the playoffs to kind of tell him he was done. But that's the thing. It's hard, man. John Franklin Myers, he talked about going winless in high school. And we looked it up. This literally happened. Mm-hmm. His high school team did not win a game when he was on the team. And then he goes to Stephen F. Austin. They didn't do all that well. Gets noticed, who was in the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl coming out of SFA, and goes to the Super Bowl right out of the blocks. And yeah, you do that. You think it's easy. Man, it's not. Mike McGlinchey went to the Super Bowl his second year. That's still cool. That's still young enough where, oh man, I think it's easy. I'm going to go back. Nope. Doesn't work. Does not work that way.
Nope.
It's hard. Getting to the Super Bowl is hard. Which is why it hurts so much when you lose. Because you're like, am I ever going to get back? I mean, the Broncos, 2 years after losing Super Bowl 48, they did get back, but not everyone was there. Orlando Franklin wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Decker wasn't there. Wes Welker wasn't there. Hey, Wes Welker, played for the Patriots with Brady, played for the Broncos with Peyton Manning, never got a ring.
It's craziness.
Doesn't that blow your mind a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard, man.
It's tough to win in this league.
And by the way, to go back to this team being young, Mike McGlinchey is 29 years old. There are 8 players on the entire roster 29 or older.
Mm-hmm.
8 players. And on the 53-player roster. If we include the practice squad, you got Michael Burton, who's 32. And David Sills is 29. But man, you gotta respect the guys that just keep on slugging, keep on going through the practice squad, even as they're getting older, man.
Yep.
That's hard.
Mm-hmm.
D'Andrea Tillman having to go through the UFL this past spring to get on the practice squad. He's 26 years old. He's been kicking around a while. It's hard.
Yep. Yeah, it's a tough league, and in the league with youth on your side, you can win. Now, to start fast, I believe someone asked us this on one of our chats, and they said, who's going to be the third receiver? Brother, it might be just Devontae to start. We'll get to Trey Franklin in a little bit, and I think the Franklin slander has gone a little too far, so let's tell the truth on that. But with Devontae, if he was the number 3 receiver to begin the season, it would not be a surprise to me at all. His skill, the lack of Marvin Mims taking that next step, and on the season, he's probably only going to catch 30 to 40 passes at most. But your number 3 receiver might just be Vele.
Yeah, and the advantage he has when he's the number 3 receiver when he's going inside slot is he can block in the run game. That's something Tim Patrick did. They liked for a long time. It's something I like out of Devon Bailey. In fact, Sean Payton did get into that when I asked him a couple of days ago about how close Devon Bailey was to kind of reaching that original vision that Sean Payton had for him, which was basically he compared him to Tim Patrick.
Yeah, well, I think they've got like body types. They're big. They have strong hands in traffic. They're smart. They're tough. They catch it well. They block. Devon's a guy that I see in a similar way. The sub slot position to X. Where Cortland plays, and Tim the same way. Tim, the sub slot either, but inside out. And then LJ's another one who played quite a bit inside. So, we all want to run the ball well, and that requires bigger, stronger, physical receivers. And so Tim's an outstanding blocker. Devon is an outstanding blocker. Obviously, he's just younger, and that's where he's at.
Yeah,
it's outstanding praise for a rookie, there.
But also bigger, stronger. Again, Sean Payton going back to what he likes in receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Bigger. It's what works in Devon Vele's favor against Marvin Mims Jr.
Mm-hmm.
There's a role for Mims. I think it's just going to take some time. He's got to grow some branches on the route tree. In my mind, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think the Rick Upchurch comp, we're going way back, but it wasn't until Rick Upchurch's 5th season that he really started to play often on offense. In the great 77 season that ended in Super Bowl 12, you had, I think it was Jack Dolbin and Haven Moses, right? And Rick was your kickoff returner and your punt returner. Now, Marvin Mims Jr. might literally go to the Pro Bowl every year while he's figuring it out because he's such a good returner. He's electric. He's going to make a big impact there. And don't for a second think that they don't value Marvin Mims Jr. because of that. They do. But the offensive part of it probably is going to be longer in coming than maybe the Broncos had hoped when they drafted him.
Yes. Give me a year, and then I'll be more concerned about Marvin Mims. Right now, doesn't even get on the radar, really. The Trey Franklin thing, this is where we get into him. Just this whole, and I had this argument with our friend Zach By on the air of Franklin's terrible. And I said, no, once every other day or once every 3 days, he'd make the catch of the day. And Zach's like, no. And I'm like, well, I mean, I can disagree with you on that, but I will tell you my observations. Once every 3 days or every other day, Trey Franklin would have the catch of the day.
He went from looking downright lost early in camp to where the plays became more frequent in nature. Now, that being said, if you're ranking the receivers as far as where they stand right now, maybe he's right there on the fringe, 5, 6, 7.
Mm-hmm.
But you're also, when you're evaluating these guys, you're making a projection. Okay, we keep working with him. Where does he go? And as Sean Payton pointed out, it's that speed. You can't really coach that, and that's what he has.
So here's what I see, man. I see great speed, probably as good run after the catch, and even in his college tape. This past week, we saw him again. He's playing Z, and look, I like where he's at relative to his progress, and I like the selection, especially where we were able to draft him. But he has rare speed, and then he's very comfortable catching an in route, and all of a sudden, taking it for a big gain. But yeah, is there a development to any of these rookies? Absolutely. Working on his lower body strength, getting stronger there. He's smart. He picks things up. There's good questions he asked. We were discussing a few things today, so I'm excited about him.
A lot of reasons to be excited.
Yeah, and he says he likes where he's at relative to his progress. And it's
our favorite phrase that we hear all the time.
That Trey Rank is repeating now. I think all of us are repeating
I think all of us are. It's
soaked into our brains.
It's like something seeping into the groundwater at this point.
Okay. Yeah.
Really. Relative to it's having that sort of impact. I know Bruce Hurdle of Fox 31 has asked a question and thrown in a relative to. I consciously was thinking about it as I was preparing to ask a question one day, and I think I said in regards to, because I want it to be different than relative to, because that's the coach's phrase. It is funny.
Or vision. What's your vision?
But that always, I like to ask him that question because it always gets a very interesting response. Because they don't, they don't bring in a player without having some kind of vision for how they're going to turn out.
Yeah. He's excited about Trey Franklin. He's a rookie and he's going to be a healthy scratch every single week, most likely. So
until an injury happens, but
sure, I don't have enough calories to burn losing my mind over Trey Franklin's. I'm like, he's inconsistent.
Yeah, and the goal is to make him more consistent and coach him up over time.
Yes.
Now that being said, they kept Tyler Beatty and Blake Watson at running back. Beatty's on the practice squad. Watson's on the 53. Beatty, in his third training camp, you can more easily slip him through than Watson. But you might see Beatty play ahead of Watson. Okay. Sure. We kind of saw, JL Skinner, they would kind of bypass him for other solutions.
For everybody.
Yeah. Last year, even though he was on the 53. So I bring that up because you may look in week 1 and be like, Troy Franklin is inactive and you're moving Lil Jordan Humphrey off the practice squad. You're giving him an elevation. Well, right now, and that's the one. And actually, Lil Jordan Humphrey is interesting because to go back to Devon Vele a little bit, if you're not sure about where Valet stands, Lil Jordan is the guy that you plug in there.
Mm-hmm. You're covered.
Yes. But again, you weren't slipping Devon Valet through. You weren't slipping Troy Franklin through. Lil Jordan Humphrey wasn't even subject to the waiver process because he's a vested veteran. He's released. And last year, you released him, you brought him back, and he played 17 games. So Sean Payton could look that player in the eye and look Lil Jordan in the eye and say, you know what? I'll take care of you. You're going to play. Mm-hmm. And I can say that. And it's not just lip service because I actually did that for you. It's what he could say to Michael Burton as well when they slipped him through.
Right.
I would be shocked if we don't see Michael Burton and Lil Jordan Humphrey in uniform in Seattle in week one. If we don't see them on the 53-player roster because of injuries or whatever by the time you get to week 4.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to play.
Oh yeah.
But again, don't scratch your head if you don't see Troy Franklin active. It's a long game with him. You know, if you can take that piece of clay and mold it, that piece of clay who's got blazing speed and he's got length. He's big. He's slender, but when they talk about him being big, you're talking about his length, you're talking about his catch radius.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's the thing I really like about this operation is you can see that there's more patience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I honestly, like, I wonder what kind of conversation we're having about JL Skinner a year from now, because I really do believe the conversation may be JL Skinner starting safety by that point.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But they are being patient with him. It's last year you couldn't sneak him through, so he's on the 53, but he's going to be inactive most of the year. This year, he's carved out a role for himself on special teams, so I expect we're going to see JL Skinner getting a jersey on game day and contributing on special teams. And where does that lead next year, right?
Mm-hmm. You do the 3-year thing instead of doing the Scooby-Doo ending. We could do the 3-year thing. In 3 years, Trey Franklin and Devon Valet might be number 1 or number 2 on your depth chart.
How many times do I say I don't want to evaluate the draft right after the draft? I want to evaluate 3 years from now.
You say it all the time. Now, I say you can grade it after the draft because you can, but you can't give a final grade.
I know.
Years from now.
I don't want to give a grade for 3 years. I mean, probably Peyton probably appreciates that sort of notion, right? I mean, because he plays the long game with guys. What?
And then the entertainment part of our business, and then the football part.
Yeah, I know.
It's wise to take the long view. The entertainment part says grade a draft as soon as it happens.
Yeah.
The football view is be patient. You like this guy for a reason. Be patient.
Trust your scouting. I think the Broncos trust their evaluations more than they did before.
Oh, Elway wouldn't listen.
Yeah.
Elway didn't pay a whole lot of attention after round 2, probably.
And I think some of that's George too, the other Peyton in this equation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, we sort of joke about how George Payton's role has evolved because of Sean Payton and kind of his primacy in the organization.
It's gravity.
But I do think in some ways it's a better setup because I think there's a bit more patience now than existed before.
Mm-hmm.
Less urgency. You give guys time. So yeah, it's cool to see, and you keep coaching them up. And this is another thing: if you can have stability on your coaching staff, then keep building them up, and then see where they go with that consistency of teaching. One thing I actually want to talk to JL Skinner about, because being a safety, he's in the core that's working the most with Jim Leonard, is sort of what he's picking up from him.
Yep.
So
we're getting that locker room on Monday.
I'm excited. I'm excited about all this.
Yeah, it's week 1, man. Let's go.
But I'm excited about seeing young players grow. because just because you failed today doesn't mean you failed tomorrow. I mean, maybe it's the baseball guy in me, but I mean, I can't count the number of times that you saw someone who clearly had the tools, clearly had the ability, clearly had the mental makeup, but then and they succeeded every level coming up, got off to a slow start, but then it started to click. If you're a Milwaukee Brewers fan, you're watching Jackson Chourio right now, and it was a tough go for him first 2.5 months of this year. But now it seems like he's making a highlight reel play every single day, right? And you just had to be patient. And to bring it to a Rockies story, here in Colorado, Carlos Gonzalez, a great player for the Rockies for a while, he was struggling when he first came up to Denver, and Jim Tracy was asked, "Well, how long are you going to keep him in the lineup?" And he said, "Until he figures it out," because they trusted what they knew about this player. They trusted what they knew about Cargo, that it happened at every level for him. Just needed to adjust to the speed, to the pitches, to everything he was seeing. And then the Rockies got themselves a star because they were patient and willing to ride it out. So, yeah, be willing to ride it out with these young guys, because I think the rewards on the other side are going to be pretty damn great.
Yeah, it could be a lot of fun to watch, and a lot of fun when you watch us on YouTube.
And I got my baseball in too. I'm happy about that.
Yeah, when you're talking about that Brewers guy, you're like, you know what I mean? And I was just like,
you don't know. I'm the audience. I'm sure there are some in the audience who are aware. So
okay, all right, you
all
got
right.
your baseball talk in. I think I've referenced 89 Batman at some point, but
so we got it all in. Good.
We got it good.
This is a
Batman
good way to go to the weekend.
Yes.
Not a long weekend, not a holiday weekend, because we're back on Monday.
Yeah, but we'll be good. We'll be here for you. So make sure you're here for us. And how can they help us out, Mace?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell,
so that you
never miss a vid.
That's right. He's Andrew Mason. Follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT's a BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Stay frosty.